Welcome to the show we like to call For the Love of Real Estate, where we dive into what it means to buy or sell a home in today's world. Join host Jill Elliott, Dallas broker associate and former radio personality, as she marries her two loves, radio and real estate. She's going to have you asking yourself, for the love of real estate, should I tackle my fears and buy, rent, sell, or remodel?
Hi, I'm Jill Elliott, and this is the pilot episode of For the Love of Real Estate. I cannot actually believe this is happening. This has been a true moment for me. The time I get to marry my loves, radio and real estate, which we'll talk about in a second. But I wanted to talk about why we named this show For the Love of Real Estate. And it sort of relates to something I heard when I first moved to Dallas in 2011. My son and I were at church, and we were asked a very simple question, which turned out not to be so simple. But here's the question. What is the definition of love? Yeah, there was silence too. And probably in the radio world, I would make you stick around until after the break. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you. But people started speaking up. There was a very uncomfortable silence. People started speaking up. Oh, it's about caring. It's about my kids. That's what love is. And he was like, nah, you'll never get it. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you anyway. The definition of love is sacrifice. You love a little, you sacrifice a little. You love a lot, you sacrifice a lot. And that statement blew me away. And you'll probably hear that a lot on this show. Think about it. Would you have ever thought that the definition of love was sacrifice? So hearing that made me think about the things that I love. And besides the obvious, and one of those things, and I've held on to it so much in my life, was the sense of home. I was just drawn to it. My parents had always had pride and ownership. And no matter where or what type of house we were living in, they made it the best place to live that it could be for us. And why I landed in this position from my past life is one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast. So many things come into play when you have a life-changing event. Sometimes things happen and they weren't exactly your choice. But whether you're ready or not for them, they're here. And here we are. So we will endearingly call this episode The Burn Show. Now, why in the world would I call it The Burn Show? Well, because like that first person you used to date after you have a breakup? Yeah, it's kind of like that. I got to get on my fears and jitters. And why I have fears and jitters, I don't know. Because, see, here's the thing. Most people in real estate have a past life. So maybe you were a teacher or a nurse or something like that. Well, guess what I was? I was an on-air radio personality for 22 years. And I still think, wow, people actually listen to shows that I've been on. And I don't say that from a place of, well, why would they listen to me? Because, it's definitely a choice. But I say it out of gratitude, really. It's a place of gratitude that for so long I got to do what I loved. And with that love came a lot of sacrifice. I mean, getting up at 3:30 in the morning, that was sacrifice right there. So why on God's green earth would someone like me be nervous to do a podcast? And, I think it's because this is the moment. This is the moment right here I have waited for since 2011. I mean, my goal and dream has been to marry my two loves, radio and real estate. And now I'll admit this too. The last thing I need on my resume is another marriage. But that's another podcast for another day. When I moved here, I had the opportunity to jump on a radio show done by two lenders, two guys I had just met. And this was right after I got my license. And they let me tag along on their show. And so thanks, Kevin and Pete, for letting me do that. Because at that time, I was a radio person doing real estate and decided I should have a little more experience in real estate before I could talk in depth. So close to 10 years later, sold quite a few houses. And, as I said, I held a broker license, which is not for the faint of heart, if you will. But that's another story for another day. But, I'm just ready to bring it all together. And I wanted you to take a moment about your first recollection of real estate. And mine was like that of most kids. It was home, plain and simple. I was brought home from Churro Hospital in 1964 in New Orleans, Louisiana. 11 months after my sister was born. And they tell me to this day that I was a planned child 56 years later. It still kind of makes me giggle. But it didn't matter that it was this small 1-bedroom for my parents and a small, and I guess you could call it what? You would call it the study that could be a bedroom, or you could call it a closet where my sister and I slept. But it was this quarter of a 4-plex type of home. So 2 apartments up and 2 down. Didn't matter that our address was a half. It was like, I remember it being 49 something and a half General Pershing. But what did matter was my grandmother and grandfather lived upstairs. And my favorite memory, although there was a lot, we would hear the adults talk about how money doesn't grow on trees. And my sister and I decided we wanted to test that. And so my grandmother would give us her change and we would bury it. When we moved, my grandmother said she dug up money in her garden for years. And by the way, they were right, in case you were wondering. Money does not grow on trees. And I understood why we moved from there. It was about to get pretty crowded. I mean, we moved from the city of New Orleans when my brother was born to Metairie in the coolest house my parents built. They worked hard for that house, too. It was our home. It was this typical New Orleans looking home, if you know what those look like. And they couldn't afford to finish the upstairs, but it had 3 bedrooms downstairs, so we were good. And my mom had another baby boy, and our family of 6 was complete. And I love that home, the neighborhood. I mean, we met friends from that neighborhood on Tartan Drive that we still have today. And I thought, we'll never move. Oh, but we did. And while home is always where your family is, I remember I was only like, maybe 4, maybe 5, 6, how much I loved that house. I mean, it hurt. It hurt to move. My sister and my 2 brothers, they didn't really care, I guess, But, I thought, okay, well, the good news is we're not moving out of the New Orleans area, right? We're going to be here. Well, not so much, at least. We were there for a little longer. And then my parents said, I know, let's move to Oklahoma. What? Wait, Oklahoma? I mean, I didn't mind visiting Oklahoma. We had some family there, but I didn't want to live there. But there we were in that Griswold station wagon, mid-70s. Off we went to Oklahoma. But you know what? It worked out. It was hard. Built a house. They built a great house on 80 acres. We had, tons of friends, horses, all that kind of stuff. And, it was a new life. But I did go back to New Orleans every year and visit my family and friends. And so when I way fast forward to 2003, I'd had my son, Jack, and I realized, this house that I was in, we were fixing it up. My former husband and my son's dad, we'd been fixing it up. We put in a pool. We did all this remodeling. I mean, it was just awesome. And I thought it was a home. I didn't think of it as an investment. It was our home, at least for a little while. I thought I would never move. But in 2009, I was blindsided by the fact my life was changing and I didn't have a say in that. My son and I stayed there while he moved to another state, and we were going to sell the house. And of course, when was that? During that lovely time of what I call real estate hell. And in addition to my own hell, we were stuck. I mean, I thought, what's going to happen? And everything that was going on in the real estate market. So it did take a long time to sell, but I was kind of okay with it because I got to stay there and I wanted to stay there. But my plan was to move back to Oklahoma, be closer to my family, get my real estate license. I was sort of aging out of radio, if you will, or so I thought. I mean, I'll tell you what makes real estate more than just selling houses is because so much emotion is involved. And when we did finally sell that house, my plans had changed. I did not move to Oklahoma as planned. I was moving to Texas to get remarried to one of my brother's good friends from high school, which again, another story for another day. But apparently God had a plan for me. It just didn't look like anything like mine. And I remember it had been 3 solid days of helping movers pack. I would walk into a room and it would be empty. Reality was setting in that my life was over. I was watching them put like 12 years of my life in a moving truck. A former boss and friend of mine was helping me with the final aspects of moving on that last day, cleaning and stuff. The movers were getting ready to leave for Dallas. The plans to get my dogs and my car to Texas were in place. And he was taking me to pick up my son. And then we were going directly to the airport. We weren't coming back. But when I started to walk out of that house for the last time, I saw my life flash in front of my eyes. I saw me bring my son home from the hospital. I saw him swimming in the pool, birthday parties. My dogs, Emerald and Ellie, they would run behind him in his walker, feeding them, Cheerios and stuff. Or talking to my dad in the middle of the night right after he was born, because my dad's a night owl. And I saw my friends that had rallied around us, and kept me sane, inviting Jack and I to dinner or get-togethers at their houses. And we loved that neighborhood. We loved that house. We loved everything about it. We were always outside with the dogs. And I saw myself leaving at 4:30 in the morning to go to my job at the radio station in Atlanta, Kicks 1015. And I think about that and it hurt. It was familiar. I feel like my friend Bob had to drag me out of that house. It was a familiar hurt from Tartan Drive. It was real. And I didn't know at the time that it's experiences like this that I think make me a better agent. I didn't realize that because by me going through what I've gone through, I understand. I understand it's hard to move. Sometimes people don't say a word, but I feel it. I feel it with them. And I get it because in my life, I've felt that way too. And I was leaving a part of me at that house. I kept telling myself, it's just a house, but I don't think I'll ever believe it. And reinventing yourself at 47 in another city, a new marriage, it wasn't in my plan, but it must have been in God's. And honestly, I had a hard time internally when I got here. I felt like I couldn't move forward. I felt like I needed to be a radio person and not do real estate. But that's why I wanted to do both. And I loved going to real estate school. I absolutely loved it. It came so simply to me because, again, when you love something, you sacrifice. When you love something, it's easy. And that's how real estate is for me. But at that time, I still would have rather been on air than a realtor. And I always say, whether you're moving around the corner or across the country, it's never easy. I mean, moving to Dallas from Atlanta, which had to be one of the best, craziest, horrific, oh no, what have I done moments in my life. I mean, remember, I wasn't just moving to another city with a new job waiting for me. I was moving to another city where I decided I was going into real estate, a type of job that's a little bit easier to get into if you know people, which I did not. I remember sitting in class in 2011 and people were saying, hi, I'm from McKinney and my mom is about to sell her $1 million home. Or I'm a teacher and all of my students and their parents, they're getting ready to sell their houses and can't wait for me to get my license. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? That means that they have to buy something, right? So this person has 60 deals out there, 30, 60 deals just waiting for them? Oh my gosh, my mind was totally overthinking that. I mean, what have I done? I would have loved to get back into radio, but you know what? It had changed a lot since 1988. I personally felt like I had aged out of it. I mean, sure, let's go to a Kenny Chesney concert until midnight and then get up at 3:30 in the morning for the show the next day. Believe me, that was much easier at 30. All of the radio stations were far when I moved to Dallas, from where we were going to live. And I wanted to be closer. I wanted to be closer to my son. He was only 7. And, I was worried, is he going to adjust? And I have to say he has brilliantly. In fact, we had come to visit Dallas this is crazy. We come to Dallas about, 6 months prior. We were going to Texas Motor Speedway. We love cars. And Jack turned around, my son Jack, and looked at Jimmy, my husband now, and said, we'll see you on March 25th. I was like, getting into the airport, kind of looking at him like, we're not coming back. No, we're not. Sorry about that. There was another car thing going on or something. I thought about it and I said, I need more time. I'm going to move to Oklahoma for sure. And guess what? who was back March 22nd, not for a visit, but forever. I don't know, Jimmy, what you were thinking, but here we are. You took in a 7-year-old, me, a big, huge boxer, a boxer pit mix. Jack came up with the name S-Dad, and I love that. We were both all in. We got married in May, and the rest is history. But moving with kids will be one of the topics that we will discuss. I'm glad he wasn't like me when I had to move to Oklahoma. Oh my gosh, yikes. He is such a trooper. But still, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for him at all. But we both knew it was the right decision. Another thing that blows me away is how real estate has really changed. I mean, when I stop and think of all the things that have changed in the last 10 years, it makes me realize how important it is to know how to navigate the world of real estate if you're in the buying or selling phase of your life. In the last 10 years or so, we have new buzzwords in real estate: multiple offers, lease back, appraisal clauses. I mean, those were like words that didn't exist in the beginning of my real estate career. And I hope this show helps you understand what you think you know maybe isn't what you should know. Sounds a little arrogant, I know, but it's my confidence. Because one of my dirty little secrets is I was a for sale by owner. I mean, how crazy is that? And this show hopefully will help you if you decide to do that. Because the bottom line is, and this is just my humble experience and research of this business that I love so much. And I will say this, or, I'll sing it. Do you remember that song, When I Was country before country was cool, is a Barbara Mandrell song? Well, that's sort of how I feel about real estate. I was in class in 2011, and there was 10, 20 people max in a class. And then this craze hit about mid 2013. Everyone's moving to Dallas. Suddenly that disastrous market that I had just left isn't happening in the Big D. Builders had stopped building. So the demand for pre-owned homes was crazy. So a few years later, I'm recruiting for my company at the school I went to, which I couldn't believe. The speaking broker always brings food. So JPAR told me to order 100 and something kolaches from this place. And I was like, how many? How many people am I speaking to? How many classes? And they said 1. And literally when I walked in, there was about 75 to 100 people in that class. And I looked at them, and instead of starting with, hi, I'm with JP and Associates, and we're going to train you, and you're going to just love it, I started out with my love explanation. Oh, yeah. It was so silent in there. It wasn't even funny. Everybody was like, who is this? And then at the end, I ended it with, you will cry. Sort of like I just did a little while ago. And all of these people couldn't believe it. We heard on the news, you can make millions in Dallas. And we saw on HGTV, you just look at 3 houses and boom, sale. Well, we saw how fun that was. Let's just say I didn't recruit for long. It's hard work, folks. And on top of that, it's emotional as well. When people move from a home, as I did, sometimes they have like 10, 15, 25 years of their life in that house. And it really is an emotional roller coaster. And the reality is sometimes it's hard to get off that ride, but you have to. I remember my son was so young, but there he was over that course of time. And he was helping me. We would pack things, throw things out we didn't need. I taught him about donating his toys. And when we had to show the house, we'd pack those dogs up. And gosh, I can remember being freezing. I guess as freezing as you can be in Atlanta. But it does get cold there. And we were at Sonic or something because there wasn't many places to take, 2 dogs and a kid for 2 hours. And we would sit there and go home. And then all of a sudden, what would happen? Ding dong. Hello. The doorbell rang. I get my son to bed and the people hadn't even made it. And I would say, okay. And it was always the people that you let in late. They just have to see it. They never buy it. Frustrating was an understatement at that time because I was doing this alone. Remember, my life was changing and I didn't have a say in it. And we can't talk about real estate without talking about selling your house on your own, because as I said earlier, I've done that. And it really is why I'm a realtor to this day. So when we did put that house on the market first in Atlanta, it was a for sale by owner. Don't worry, he said. We've done this before, Jill, which we had. We can do it again. So he goes to another state, and I'm going to sell the house with Jack and the dogs. Until one day, I got a phone call from a guy. I was trying desperately to qualify on the phone. Have you spoken with a lender? No. What do you do for a living? I'm in the medical field. Oh, are you a doctor? No. Are you a nurse? No. In administration? No. And then all of a sudden, it was like someone was screaming at me. They punched me in the stomach. God was saying, get a realtor. Get a realtor. Or maybe another opinion. My neighbor used to be a state trooper. He said he would love to come over when there was a showing in case someone tried something. But that wasn't going to happen. I realized I was being crazy and downright wrong to think I could let someone in my house with a child who was like 5. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I don't know anything about them. But this guy said, oh, he just wanted to look at the house. Okay, sure. It hit me. Why? To go back to your buddies and say, oh, well, no male clothes in that closet. We can take this one. No amount of money could make me not hire a realtor. So I did. Oddly enough, I found out that a recent open house in my neighborhood, a single man walked in to the house and he went down to the basement. Most houses in Atlanta have a basement, a full like daylight basement, but he went down and kept asking the realtor, come downstairs. He had a question. Well, she didn't go, and she called her office, and that guy, I guess, left, and everybody was okay. But we all know that there can be stories. We all know that people do sell their houses by owner successfully, but things have changed, disclosures and things like that. And it's something else we'll talk about more in depth, because I'm not going into stats at who can and who can't do it. Not really relevant in my book, because this is today. And on that same note, realtors, we can be vulnerable too. I mean, maybe the realtors are having a tough time and someone calls and says they want to look at a house, and you just jump up and go. And they haven't talked to a lender. They don't know much about what their path is. Do they have, you don't, do they have a house to sell? Where sometimes you don't ask the right questions, and it's just not how it works at all. It's just not how it works. And that's another topic we're going to discuss, of how to make your experiences better if you're a buyer or seller. Because there is a standard operating procedure that I feel is not respected in our industry. And in upcoming shows, I want to discuss that. I want to discuss that SOP, standard operating procedure, because it can be a matter of life and death for realtors. I've met so many amazing people because of this business, and I want to share them with you. I want to interview people that can bring value to your search for a home or to sell it, because things seem to be changing year to year. There's new information every single day. I mean, if you would have told me in 2009 I would be here doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't have believed you. If you've ever been at a crossroads in your life and wondering which road to take, make the decision and move on. Believe me, I've wondered, but if you don't keep looking forward and find the happiness in the choices you've made, you're looking in the rearview mirror, not what's ahead. And I often wonder, not about the past as it could have been, but what if me and my son had stayed in Atlanta? We decided that this is where we'll stay. But that wasn't how it was supposed to be. I believe we were protected from something. I'm not sure what. But I honestly believe that something protected us. And I have faith in that decision, even though I didn't really want to, but it does keep me going. I remember I'd been in real estate a couple of years, and I was helping a young couple, and I could just feel it. He was not really on board, not sure about living in the suburbs. It's a big life change if you're used to living in Dallas or in a big city anywhere, right? And you're going to go to the suburbs. Oh, no. And I remember he looked at me one day and he said, Jill, what if we buy a house and the next day I find something better? Okay. Good thing he was about 6'5" and I'm 5 feet tall. He couldn't see my eyes cross when I looked up because I had on sunglasses. And I was thinking, what do I say to this? And then I said it. John, real estate is like marriage. When you decide on a house, you stop looking. He was silent on that one, and really so was I, until I heard his wife going, did you hear that? And I used to be surprised when people also asked this question, as when we were searching for houses. Well, how much money can I make when I sell it? Oh, yikes. Well, first you have to buy one. And that surprises me because remember, back in the day, real estate wasn't an investment. It really wasn't. For me, it was the love of it. Oh, that's the name. There it is again. It was a place to live. It was a place to gather. It was a place to have your memories. But now it's an investment. And we have folks on, we'll have folks on to discuss that. Like, what do you need to do? Remember, during the time you live there, this is an important factor. When you live there, what have you done? People want to know. What have you done while you live there? If you didn't have to do anything, well, lucky you. But there are just certain things from back in the day when you sold a home that when you do now, what do you need to do? But Jill, we won't sell this one. Yeah, we've all thought that, but you just never know. Sometimes you do have to move. And so the question goes back, when you're ready to sell, have you done anything? What have you done? I mean, if you've lived in a house 40 years, there could be a few things that maybe you overlooked. They might need work, some upgrading, but an agent can help you, and they can help you know what others are doing in your neighborhood and show you what are the best options for you so you don't overdo it. That's even worse sometimes than underdoing it. But all houses fly off the market in Dallas. No, they don't. There really is a method to that madness. There are so many things to talk about, when it comes to real estate, because I do believe all roads lead to real estate. We want to live here because it's close to work. We want to live here because we don't care that it's an hour out in the country. We don't care because it's an hour to our happiness out in the country when work is over. We want to live here because there's a shopping mall nearby or family. So many times I hear that and I want to make sure, are you going to be happy in 5 years? What is your plan? I want to sell my house and I want this much because I put all this into it. And maybe you only live there 3 years, but you have to move. Well, will that be a good investment? It depends. Depends on what you've done. It depends on what you haven't done. But you have to move. And that's one of the things that I think makes me a little bit, definitely it'll be a different show, but when you move, is it really time for you to move? Is that agent being honest with you? Is it? If you're just upgrading or downgrading or something like that, not moving out of, for a job. Because there was a time, you just didn't make money on real estate. Even if you live there 10 or 20 years, you might eke out a few thousand, but interest rates and lots of things change that. There was also a short time when you bought a house in Dallas and you only had to live there a couple of years and you could make a nice chunk of change because values were going up so significantly. They have leveled as far as that goes, I think. But we're still in that seller's market. So if you have a house to sell, and probably in a lot of markets right now, and I believe it was in the summer of 2018 through 19, there was a lull in the market when it came to sellers. I remember we could all feel that shift. Houses were great. Houses were taking longer to sell in most price points than they had in the past. But then good old 2020 hit and people started looking at their homes differently because they actually had to live there. It wasn't just a place to hang your hat and go on to the next event. But we're seeing multiple offers on homes now. 200, not just the 200 and 300K, 500K, 600K, 700K. Let me put it this way. If your house looks like Chip and Joanna are going to jump out and say, here's your fixer-upper, at least in the DFW area, they pretty much probably have more than one offer. And I can promise you that if you want to make a low offer on a house after one day on the market, they're going to hold that offer until a better one comes along. Even if they sell it for that price down the road, they weren't going to do it the first day on the market. I mean, would you? Sometimes I ask buyers, would you walk away from 20 grand on the first day? I wouldn't recommend it. Unless it's grossly overpriced. That's a whole nother story. That's another issue. And we'll discuss it. Home means more now to the masses than ever. Home has always meant something to me. A place where I could go and a place where I couldn't wait to get back to. I'm okay. I am a homebody. Can you tell? At least at this age, not back in the day. And where are you in the stages of home buying or selling? Kind of thinking about it? What are you willing to sacrifice for a home that you love? Do you love it a little or do you love it a lot? So until next time, I'm Jill Elliott for The Love of Real Estate.
Thank you for tuning into For the Love of Real Estate. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to fortheloveofrealestate.biz to join the conversation, access the show notes, and sign up for our newsletter.